And we mentioned it in that last segment about the Steelers and their quarterback battle. And looks like, I mean, it's not confirmed yet, but it seems like Brandon Aiyuk, the all NFL wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers, will be heading to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the thing is this, we don't know what the deal will be. Obviously, draft picks coming from Pittsburgh, probably a player, but it doesn't seem like, I mean, I don't think they're getting George Pickens. So I don't know what, they're not apparently getting a player of the caliber or even in the same ballpark as Brandon Aiyuk at that receiver position. Because, Martin, if I'm a Niners fan and this happens, look, it is what it is. I don't think it takes the team out of Super Bowl contention, although they will miss Brandon Aiyuk. He is very good, and he is has a great connection with Brock Purdy. But the Cleveland deal, and I know Aiyuk reportedly didn't want to go to Cleveland, and he nixed the deal to the Patriots, and we'll get into that later. But if I'm a Niners fan, I am ticked off that that they didn't do the deal with Cleveland. Because Amari Cooper, while I don't think at this stage is as good as Brandon Aiyuk, I think he could go to San Francisco and be incredibly productive, give you similar production to what Aiyuk did. I mean, their production last year when Cooper had mediocre quarterbacks throwing to him, old Joe Flacco, struggling Deshaun Watson, and so on, put up essentially the same numbers as Aiyuk. So I don't think the Niners would have missed the beat with Cooper, and financially they'd have been in pretty good shape to keep some of the guys they may end up losing a year from now. But now this deal, again, I don't think it's a killer for them. I think they'll still be good. But it's a bummer if you're a Niners fan because you're losing a great player and you're not getting one comparable to him or close to him in return.
Yeah, I mean, the Cleveland deal to me, we talked about yesterday, that made the most sense for both sides. Aiyuk, but this is what he's got. He's essentially got a no-trade clause. If he says he's not opting into an extension, no one's going to trade for him. So, we kind of looked at this in a backwards way, that this hold in wasn't working because he had a better look at the market than we did, obviously, and he knows that, look, either somebody's going to cut this check, or that's the way he's moving about this. So, I guess the one place he didn't want to go was New England because reports are they were willing to offer him over $30 million a year, and then he said no thanks to that, which I understand, but like you said, we'll get into that a little bit later. If I'm a Niners fan, though, I'm mad that we're even in this position because you knew that Brandon Aiyuk was going to be in this. Like, you don't need a crystal ball to see where all the wide receiver market is going. You don't need a crystal ball to see that Brandon Aiyuk is not necessarily he's a very, very, very good player. I think there are at least 4 wide receivers that you would mention, probably 6 to 7 wide receivers you'd mention as true game breakers before you got to Brandon Aiyuk. I think the 49ers know that, and what he does for their system works for them. They should have got this either squared away contract-wise or traded him a long time ago. Before now, where you can't even get anything for him.
Well,
or anything you can use this year, unless it's a player, I should say.
Right, and look, Aiyuk, his only leverage, Martin, is to fake an injury. No need to sugarcoat it. No need to dress it up in kind language. And I don't know that he would. I'm not saying he would have. But that was his only leverage. Or I guess you go there and you act like a jerk and you bring down the spirit of the entire locker room.
Sure.
And maybe he was willing to do that, or maybe he was already doing that during his hold in.
Well, Mike Silver's as plugged into the San Francisco 49ers as anybody I know, and he reported yesterday that part of the reason, or yesterday, maybe the day before, but part of the reason why the conversation has changed on Aiyuk, because you remember just this time last week, the Niners
seemed convinced, right?
Yeah, the Niners, the idea that we now are talking about a deal potentially in place to go to Pittsburgh or that he turned down New England, those weren't conversations we were having last week.
Right.
This week, though, Mike Silver reported, like, look, maybe the head coach has just grown tired of him standing around. Right?
Well,
now
standing around with an attitude or just being there but not practicing?
I mean, I think that if he's just there not practicing, I'm not saying that either one, honestly, but I'm not accusing Brandon Aiyuk of being like a troublemaker or anything of that nature. But when he's sitting there, he's supposed to be a huge part of your offense coming up this upcoming season, and you can't utilize him and use him in practice because Aiyuk says, I'm not practicing, I get a new contract. Kyle Shanahan seems to be, by Mike Silver's reporting, throwing his hands up in the air and saying, all right, find somewhere else to play then, because I need guys who are going to be here.
I did not see that report, but Mike Silver, as you said, is a good reporter. If that's the case, Martin, then I'm going to say, like, if he's just not practicing, but he's not looking disgruntled, he's not behaving in a way that disrupts his teammates, even to the point of, just having a bad attitude that brings everything down. If he's not doing any of that and he's just standing over there, sometimes talking with guys, sometimes laughing, joking. We all saw the photo of, was it him and Shanahan slapping five or whatever, laughing
shaking
together.
Hands.
Yeah, shaking hands.
Palling around.
Like, if it's nothing negative, and I get a coach being like, man, we trying to win this Super Bowl or not? But it's also a business. This isn't high school. This isn't even a college. It's also a business. And you have to understand that. And if he's not acting up, if he hasn't told you, man, look, watch how my back start hurting if y'all don't pay me. And I say that, Martin, because if he didn't play without being injured, like he just decides I'm still holding out, then he wouldn't get paid this year, nor would this season count on his career, and he wouldn't become a free agent next summer.
Yeah.
So that's why I say he could fake an injury, because then it's just, hey, I was injured. I was there ready to play, but I just was hurt. And then you get your money and you become a free agent next summer. But I think if that's the case, Kyle Shanahan has to, and the Niners need to look past that and be like, look, we think he's going to play. He wants the $14 million. And it behooves him to play well. And it behooves him not to have an attitude and not to act up and not to derail our rush toward the Super Bowl.
Well, Chris, so if you look at
if he wants to get the bag, he needs to play well and have a good attitude. That would be my outlook.
That's if he wants to get the bag in San Francisco.
No, if he wants to, well, look, he probably would get paid, but still, I mean, even I just think, I think, yes, some teams have paid, malcontents. Antonio Brown, Randy Moss. Were either of them, is Brandon Aiyuk as good as either of them?
No.
I don't think so at this point. Right.
No.
So I
don't think so.
Even Antonio Brown got to a point where it was like, enough. We're done with him.
Right.
And so I just, I think if he's acting up, if he's telling them I'm going to fake an injury and all that, then I get it. But I might have pushed it. And look, to be honest, maybe this is still open, Martin, because they had agreed to terms with other teams too, right? So
yep.
We'll see if this ends up coming to pass.
But I think when you look at the 49ers contract situation, as Brock Purdy is on the, that Brock Purdy albatross contract, which it seems to me by all the actions that San Francisco is going to offer him, there seems to be there will be little haggling over that, because I think you take the last pick of the draft, you say, hey, pal, we're going to pay you around $50 million or $50 to $60 million for the next few years. I think he's going to be okay with that, right? I don't think there's going to be too much negotiation for him to reset the market or something along those lines. I think they'll get it done. It won't be like Dallas, right, where Dallas is like, you make me the highest paid quarterback or else. But it was coming down to either Deebo Samuel or Brandon Aiyuk. And I keep referring back to the same Mike Silver piece I read yesterday because I think it's a good insight into what's going on there. But Deebo apparently has been crushing camp. Came in great shape, first in line for all the drills, and he's in the same boat as Aiyuk, except he's older and gets injured more frequently because he's used in so many different ways. Right? Like, he's more of a gadget player than a traditional outside the numbers wide receiver. I think when you juxtapose Aiyuk sitting on the bench in practice, Deebo Samuel saying, all right, look, I know what my situation is. You guys drafted a receiver in the first round. You're making the decision between me and Aiyuk and coming to work and just being a model, top-of-the-line professional citizen, you know what I'm saying, in terms of the way that goes. I see that is where I think in general it could annoy Kyle Shanahan because when somebody's holding out, you can just say, well, that they're not here. We're not worried about them. But if somebody holding in, that's essentially it's a protest.
You got to be better than that, though. I'm sorry. Again, unless he's making problems behind the scenes or, heck, out in the open. Dallas, should they be like, you know what, CD, forget you, man. You don't want to you don't want to play? We trying to win a Super Bowl and you going to hold out?
Right.
Let's cut him. I mean, come on. This is a business. You have to deal with this in the NFL. I just don't think that's the way it works. And I think a critical thing, and you and I will get into how this could affect Purdy, but later on. But I think, Martin, what this does, and like I said, they're still Super Bowl contenders in my book, I would imagine in yours as well.
Sure.
But what this does is this now gives them less room for injury, I will say. Not less room for error. Of course, that's true too, but less room for injury. Deebo gets hurt. You know, he misses a couple games a year, it seems. That's going to hurt them more if Ayuk's not there.
Sure.
Christian McCaffrey right now has a calf strain. He had injury issues before he got to San Francisco and has been healthy since he got there. But if he goes back to his old ways and is injured, that's going to hurt them if Aiyuk isn't there. And so they have less room for error in that regard. And that could make a difference because we know this thing is very tight, and the difference between reaching the Super Bowl and going out in the first round is very slim when teams are very evenly matched. So that's what I think is going to affect them.
And I think they were the clear-cut favorites in the NFC for a long time. I think now they're probably falling back to the pack with this type of drama, in my opinion. Okay, now, are they still at the top of the pack? Sure. But there's not a Grand Canyon divide between them and everybody else. Yeah,
because they still do have 8, players that were in the top 100, and this is minus Aiyuk, and 7 that were in the top 30.
Yeah, I mean, they're stacked. They're stacked.